Okay, so here's your celebration tomato, and we'll take a look at the plant. Now this plant's on its way out. It really went through a hard time this year. The rain really drowned it out. So unfortunately I can't get the full video as I wanted to. I'm surprised the plant's even alive as of right now. Between the blight killing it and all the rain drowning it out every day, I'm surprised it's even alive. So nonetheless, I do have one tomato that's ready that actually didn't split. From all that rain, this is one of the few varieties that didn't split. This is a determinate tomato, so keep that in mind. It's not a indeterminate. And this is the celebration tomato and not the celebrity tomato. Now, there's a couple different varieties that sound very similar to the celebration tomato, and they're not. This is a totally different variety of tomato. This is kind of a market more type of tomato where people like to grow these really fast to bring them to the markets. It's generally a red slicer. I'll show it to you here. You'll get a bract that comes off that puts out, what, 2, 4, 6. You get about 6 tomatoes in a bract. You're going to get a good slicer size off it, like this, which is a very beautiful tomato, by the way. That's a gorgeous little tomato. Perfect. With all that rain and everything we got, and this didn't split, this is a keeper. Hopefully it tastes good, and that way I can grow this again next year. Now, I'm not a big fan of determinate tomatoes, but I figured I do a lot of reviews on tomatoes, and it wouldn't be right to not review or grow any determinate tomatoes. So I figured I have to do a few, and this is one of the few that I do grow every once in a while. It's a pretty hardy tomato. I don't know if it's a hybrid of any kind. I'm sure it's got some hybridization to it, but that doesn't mean that it's genetically modified or anything like that. But they have to hybridize this tomato with other tomatoes to come up with this tomato. So most tomatoes you eat now are hybrids. So when you hear heirloom, that's kind of a misnomer, so to speak, because an heirloom refers to a variety that's been around for almost 100 years, yes. But that heirloom was a hybrid at one time. When it first was created, it started off as a hybrid. So you got to just keep that in mind. Most of these tomatoes are hybrids. At some point, they had to have been. So, yeah, there's a good amount of tomatoes left on here, though a few of them did fall off. And the plant really got sick with the blight. That's an unfortunate thing. And I just got to start getting these tomatoes off while I can. I'll leave that one on there. I'll take these two off. But all right, so we'll see you back at the bench. Okay, so here's the tomato review part for the celebration tomato. Now, this is a determinate tomato, and I believe it's a regular leaf. And so it's basically just a regular slicer tomato. And the plant didn't do that good this year, and that could be because of the weather. But in general, I do believe this tomato is probably a pretty good producer, providing all the weather and everything else is perfect. You're going to get a good harvest out of it. But if the weather's kind of off, hot, and then dried and wet, and then it just stresses the tomato plant out, and you probably won't get as good of a production because this plant will die off before it can recuperate itself because it's a determinate variety tomato. Let's take a closer look at that tomato. Okay, this one's not totally ripe yet, but you can get an idea what it looks like on the inside. It's a beautiful looking. It's a 5-chambered tomato basically, or a 4-chambered tomato. It's a very beautiful type of store tomato. This is very common type of tomato grown for supermarkets. Generally, this is the variety that's used. So it's a good all-around salad-making tomato. I mean, you really can't go wrong with this. You could slice it up and put it on hamburgers, all kinds of stuff. It's just an average, very good, well sought after, from what I understand. It's a well sought after variety of tomato when it comes to the regular type of tomatoes. A lot of people don't want to get too much into heirloom tomatoes, and the main reason for that is because heirlooms are very difficult to grow. They get sick easy. They're not productive, and so generally a lot of people will go off to these more commercial grade type tomatoes. Now, I do believe that this tomato is a commercial grade tomato, the celebration tomato. And please do not confuse this with the celebrity tomato. It's a totally different tomato. This is a celebration tomato. It's generally a commercial grade tomato. It's commonly used in monoculture and large agricultural tomato production for basically, like I said, supermarkets. So that's pretty much what it is. So here it is, and let's cut a piece out and let's give it a taste test. Well, we gotta do our Brix meter, right? You always have to do the Brix on these. Glad I bought this Brix meter. It's very, very handy. I already know if it's going to be sweet or sour, or yeah, it's nice to have this, and it's pretty accurate, to be honest with you. Okay, so this is 6 on the Brix. 6 on the Brix. Let's give it a taste test and see what it tastes like. Basically, I'm surprised. This ain't even a ripe tomato. If you bought a tomato that looked like this in the store, when they're kind of not fully ripened, like this one's fully ripened, but when you get them in the store, they're kind of like orange like that. This tastes nothing like a store tomato. Absolutely 10 times better. Surprisingly, it's pretty good. I'm actually impressed with the flavor of this tomato. It's a full-body tomato, meaning all the levels of the tomato are coming to the surface when you eat it. It's not just too tangy or too sweet, or it's not perfectly balanced, but it's full body and flavor. All the flavors are coming up to the top when you eat it. It leaves a nice aftertaste for you, and it's just a very nice tomato. I'm going to tell you that right now. This is a great slice of tomato. It's great for salads. I just imagine, hopefully I get a few more of these and I can actually make some salads with it before it completely dies. All right, sweetness, I'm going to say about 30 on the sweetness. Tangy is going to be about 35, so it's a little bit offset, but you can kind of taste the contrast. The tanginess is pretty interesting the way it hits your palate. It works its way down your tongue to the point where the back part of your tongue, the taste buds in the back part of your tongue are what savor the tangy and sour and tarty type flavors. Now, this tomato has a strange way of affecting your tongue from the top of it all the way to the back, where the flavor will sit around the back of your tongue for a little bit. It's got a nice effect to it. I really like this tomato. It's definitely been bred for maximum taste and aesthetics and everything. It's not this tomato is not a regular tomato. Most tomatoes are hybrids, but I'm saying this variety, you can taste it right out the gate. It was bred for perfection. Yeah, I really like the tomato. I mean, I'm not rating tomatoes this year, but if I was to rate that tomato, I'd probably put this up in the top 10. Definitely put it up in the top 10. And, would it be on the high end of the top 10, but it would definitely be in that top 10. It's a tomato that's worth growing. For it to, have gone through all the problems it had with the blight and this happening to it, and the rain we got, 25, almost 30 inches of rain in the last month and a half, and and this tomato is like one of the few tomatoes that didn't split either. It didn't split. It handled all that rain and washed all the nutrients out of my soil. So even with all of that stuff that happened, this tomato plant still managed to put out a very tasty, satisfying tomato. Unfortunately, it didn't put out a lot of tomatoes because the late blight is getting on the flowers and it's causing all the flowers to turn yellow and drop. So that's an unfortunate thing with tomato plants, unfortunately, but once the blight comes, that's really the end of your tomato plant. But this tomato did put out, it's still got like maybe about another 4 or 5, I think, on there. So I should get it, another 4 or 5, which isn't very many. But I grow 150 tomato plants a year, I'm never out of tomato. I always consume more than I can possibly, eat anyway. A lot of them go to waste, unfortunately, because I don't eat them and they ripen in fall. But this is a tomato I would definitely pick. If I see a bunch of them early coming out, I'm going to pick them and put them in my fridge because I will make salads with these. It's a very, very good, I would say, salad tomato. Now, I haven't eaten them green, but this would probably make a good green pickling tomato as well. I like the effect of the tomato right out the gate. This is the kind of a tomato that you can lactose ferment this tomato in a very similar fashion you would do cucumbers, and I think it would make a fantastic pickling tomato. So that's something, if I get enough of them and they're green, maybe I will. I'll do a little video on how to pickle your green tomatoes. But that's it. That's your tomato review for the Celebration tomato. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.